But before we get started, I just love to introduce everyone to Dwayne Brake, our Vice President of Operations here at the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And just so folks know, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A if you have any questions, and we'll be saving a little time at the end to answer those, and we can always reach out if you have questions in the meantime. All right, so Dwayne, if you just maybe like to give a little bit of an introduction, your time at the food bank, kind of what inspired you to, join our organization, just to just share a little bit about your background, that would be wonderful.
Sure, absolutely. Well, hello, everyone. I want to thank everyone as well for joining. Again, I'm Dwayne Brake. I have the privilege of serving as the Vice President of Operations for the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. I've been with the organization for going on 13 years now and served in my current capacity for about 8 years. And I oversee the inventory management, the warehouse distribution, transportation, and facilities management for the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. And over the last year and a half, I've had the privilege of being charged with leading the efforts of the expansion project. I've always had distribution and operations in my background. And originally, I moved to Cleveland about 15 years ago. I didn't really know much about the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, but knew about some of the services. I saw an opening, honestly, for operations position. It looks like it was really a good fit. And it was eye-opening, really, to see the ins and outs of how the Greater Cleveland Food Bank worked. I really had a kind of a closed mind approach to it, but it was more, similar to direct service, a smaller pantry, and actually having the privilege and honor of working for the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. It was a lot more than that. And really being able to see the many partners that we touch, and also hearing a lot of the client stories is pretty much what keeps me here, really understanding the impact that we're having on the community. And really it stuck with me. It's really meaningful work. And it's something that, I'm proud to share and just talk about with anyone.
Yeah, well, you glided really quickly over what you're in charge of, which is essentially everything. Obviously we couldn't do anything without our amazing partners and the volunteers who help us. But in terms of where the rubber meets the road, getting food in and getting food out when it's, literally, 48, 50 million pounds of food every single year, that's you and your amazing team. So it's really the heart of everything that we do. So I glided over that very quickly.
It certainly is a joint effort. There's a team. I have a team of great team of operations folks that really helps get this work done each and every day. It certainly is a privilege to work with each and every one of them.
Yeah, they are amazing, and the unsung heroes. All of us, we on the kind of other side of things, we just sing the praises constantly for the folks who are actually doing the work. I just get to be really excited and share with other people all the amazing stuff that everyone else is doing. Wonderful. Well, as like I just started to touch on, is we are serving hundreds of thousands of people every year, tens of millions of pounds of food, 6 counties. That's a lot, and that was even before the pandemic began. Because I know a lot of people might have the misconception that we tried to do this expansion project as a response to COVID and the increased need from that. But as I understand, this actually began before 2020 and everything kind of went haywire. If you don't mind talking a little bit about how this all began, the need for this expanded facility.
Sure thing. You hit the nail on the head. Prior to the pandemic, we knew we were approaching a point where we could soon be running out of space. We tracked really our utilization of the warehouse on a continuous basis. So for a period of time, there's trend data that we were able to see that we were approaching, 85 to 90% utilization in the warehouse. And what that means is essentially you're out of space. And this was prior to the pandemic. So we knew that we were approaching a point of time where the facility, we were just simply going to outgrow that facility. So we did have some preliminary conversations and started some of the legwork prior to the pandemic by reaching out even to an operations consultant to understand how much space we think we might need in the future. So we started that work certainly in advance just to kind of understand if we could expand our existing facility. What would that look like? How much more capacity would that give us? And shortly after that, we know. I'll back up a little bit. Before we got to that point, we had to create several workarounds. I would say within the operations, and that's not ideal because when you start to create those workarounds, you're just putting a Band-Aid on the process. You're now just spending more time doing the same task, and we started to see that on a repetitive basis. Certainly for a period of a few months after that.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and with the capacity, I know when we were kind of talking and prepping for this talk, we were talking about kind of comparing it to how a refrigerator at home works. When if you've got a refrigerator at home and it's 85 or 90% full, a little room, but you couldn't get a Thanksgiving turkey in there. And if you needed to get the mustard out, that's behind the mayo, that's behind the ketchup. You take everything out and then grab it, put everything back in. And as I understand it, that's kind of how our warehouse was operating before our new facility, was just redundant, duplicative process that was adding so much time and inefficiency too.
absolutely, and that's a great example because for every time you needed to get something that was in the back of the refrigerator, you almost had to pull everything out. So imagine doing that to scale of multiple truckloads that are coming in per day. So you can see how that's certainly a lot of inefficiencies that are built in, and with those inefficiencies, you're going to need additional help to do things inefficiently. So certainly, we knew that was something that we wanted to address in the future, and with the pandemic, that really just accelerated our plans to move forward with the expansion project.
Yeah, I mean, with everything that happened in 2020, I mean, it really put into stark relief how necessary our services are and how important operational flexibility and efficiency is. But it is true that our services were already going up and hitting that ceiling even before then. Because I think there's with hunger and food insecurities, a lot of that is hidden from sight. And I feel like also a little bit on the operation side is it looks like a lot's moving and going on. And sometimes it's because it's too much is going on and we want to make it simpler.
Absolutely, that's
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Well, I know there's also a lot of costs that are involved with some of these really inefficient processes, time and equipment wear and all of that as well. That's not good for a sustainable organization either.
No, that's exactly right. Again, with those multiple touches that we're having on inventory that's going around just to move things around 3 or 4 times, that's excessive wear that we're putting on the pieces of equipment, and you're going to need additional staff to help with that, moving that product around back and forth, and that translates into really additional staff, additional equipment usage, and also other equipment that may be needed as well. Because at one point in time, we weren't able to fit everything within the building, so we did have to have refrigerated trailers in the back of the building to really help with the distribution efforts. And you may ask, if the need is really going up, well, why do we need additional trailers? Shouldn't the food be going out of the building? And some of the things with the pandemic, we had to pivot and do things a little bit differently. We really helped out at a time where some of our partner sites were closing to really step up and do some of that direct distribution at a time where a lot more families were in need. So there were things like building those emergency boxes that we're providing at the Muni lot each week. It required several truckloads of different ingredients to really put those items together. So it required us to have more product on hand to assemble those boxes to really make those no-touch distributions go by a little bit more efficiently. So that was really the reasoning behind having additional trailers and having so much more inventory in at a period of time.
Wow. And I mean, I would imagine also, one thing we always talk about with like the refrigerated trucks in our new space is, refrigerated food, that's typically also going to be your healthiest, most nutritious, and most expensive food. Which is the food that folks in need really, really want, and is going to actually help them be healthier and thrive more, is fruits and veggies and meats and dairy and things like that. So having to spend extra money on a refrigerated trailer when that money could be going to other services and programs, not the greatest use of our resources. So it's amazing that we're able to move away from that too. Um, I would bet that safety is also another thing that we don't like to have trucks going or equipment going in the wrong direction, or making it more complicated too.
Absolutely. And that was just something that was modified as well within the facility, just, the flow of traffic. And, when you're pretty much full, we had, pallets of product that's literally can't fit in the racks anymore. We were putting things around corners. Again, it does create, potential safety issues, and glad that we were able to really expedite our plans to be able to have a facility now where we don't have to worry about that. But certainly we could start to see some of those efficiencies because there are less touches happening along the way for the same process.
Yeah. And I can just imagine, at least from, my perspective, is I would imagine it would also get frustrating to folks who are working in our warehouse to have to, stuff and then go back and all of that, that they're probably very happy to have easier working conditions so they can be more efficient and not feel like they're having to waste their time too.
Absolutely. And it was a collective effort of, really getting feedback from all staff and really incorporating that into the design of the facility. So we did. We reached out to every operator and had the opportunity to provide sticky notes on a large post-it board to really help us keep the mind frame of what are some of the things we want to take with us and what are some of the things we want to leave behind. And certainly there was a sticky note that was on the wall that we wanted to leave behind all of these wasted processes. We want to leave behind, shortage of space. So we wanted to make sure, all those things were taken into consideration to make sure that we can do things more effectively so that we can serve our community, as efficiently as possible.
Yeah. Well, I love that, asking, all the people who work with us, what they're seeing and what they're experiencing, because you had mentioned that in the process that we moved to build the new facility, working with external operations people and all that. So it's great to hear that we weren't just looking outside to other experts, but our own experts inside the food bank. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, we looked at, really some outside consulting to really kind of help hone in about how much space we would think we would need. So we did provide some data based on our movement rates, but then also data in terms of how we're serving our community and what our projected poundage would be or meals served for the community would be, and letting them know the output. That kind of helped put the reference in frame of terms of, our size of the facility that we would need to help meet that output. But staff played a key role in really understanding the flow and how we're going to get the work done in the building and what key pieces of equipment we're going to need and how things should happen in the building were certainly critical information that we were able to receive from staff and incorporate within this facility.
Yeah, no, that I love that. That's great to use all the different people and all the different knowledge to come together on that. Well, so I think I've got a great sense of what we needed, why we needed it, and now I know the last year and a half, the key part of building this and planning this, it happened during COVID. So even though we were thinking about it pre-COVID, this all really happened during a very difficult time. People were, at home working. Can you just describe a little bit about how we actually accomplished being able to build something of this scale, this magnitude, while we were also ramping up our services and, like you said, also changing our distribution models with ourselves and a lot of our partners too? That's a
Absolutely.
lot.
It is, and a lot of staff played a part of this because a lot was happening at one time. As we're trying to really and start the new facility build. So, like you mentioned, um, our response to our pandemic. So being flexible has been kind of a buzzword that's been stated for the last 2 years. That's one thing that everyone could relate to during our pandemic response is being flexible because we all had to do things differently and really come up with ideas. Some worked, some didn't, and went back to the drawing board and figured out what worked. So with those new distribution models, such as the Muni lot, the emergency boxes that we were creating, not only for the Muni lot, but for our partners that were still open to maintain those safe distributions. We also had to think about the time frame for the facility. This was a time where the supply chain was now starting to be impacted with lead times for critical items needed for this expansion project. So steel was the first thing that's needed for the foundation. And we started to see something along the lines of a 3 to 6 month time frame for steel to arrive. So we were doing things a little bit, I would say, kind of unconventional. And what I mean by that is typically you would design a facility, you hand everything over, and the building would start. We had complete drawings, but we did things in sense of, what's the lead time? We need to make sure that we have this piece of information done for the lead time for these type of items here. So in a sense, there was a period of time where I would say there was some designing and building happening concurrently. And that's really an unconventional approach that you would take when you're building a facility. But when you're in the middle of a pandemic, you have to do things a little bit differently and creatively to really get to that end result.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I mean, I can only imagine what it was like kind of in the war room, so to speak, of making these decisions and going through it. But every time that I've spoken with someone in real estate or industry, they really can't believe that we were able to build this at this time because everyone that I've spoken with has run into that supply chain issue and things are getting delayed 6 months, 12 months. It really sounds like if we had not moved really decisively in those early stages, we probably would not be open, I would assume.
I would agree because some of those lead times that we saw a year ago is even extended further now. So I think that unconventional approach really did position us well to allow us to open a facility at the time we did. I think if we ever taken a traditional approach, we would either be halted at the project or we would still be waiting on pieces of equipment or material, et cetera. It may not be in this facility today.
Yeah, and it's amazing that we are because for all the reasons you've pointed out, is we can be more efficient, we can increase our capacity, we can meet more needs. So yeah, so I'm amazed and very, very glad that we just moved forward on that. So I also know, building a project like this, we used, outside experts, inside experts. I'm sure that also the support from our community was also really important for finding the location, helping with the design, architecture. I would love to just shout out some of the committees and other folks who helped contribute to this process during this really, really amazing collaborative effort.
Absolutely. Some of the key folks that have been really at the forefront of our project, starting with, our architect at Robert P. Madison, really put the design together and designed the facility that we're in today. Independence Construction really performing, all of the building work to put that plan together. And we had great guidance as well from our owner's rep at Turner Construction. Those parties really help move the work forward. Certainly our board level committee, we have a construction committee that played a key part as well, just to help keep things moving along. All those parties really had that insight information on here's what we're seeing on lead times and really kind of help guide the food bank on maybe the decisions that we need to make in kind of a sequence step so that we can make sure that we're hitting those estimated lead time dates that we're seeing in the manufacturing world. So I think certainly those and many others. Osborne Engineering has been a key partner as well with a lot of the designs to incorporate a lot of the core functionality in addition to our sustainability efforts that are built into this facility are all great partners that have been a part of this project.
No, I mean, it really is incredible the support that we've had from everyone in our community, in terms of, our service during the last, 2.5 years, and then this project. It really shows you what we can accomplish when you get people in the room and you set a goal and you decide to make it happen. I think it's pretty incredible, and it reminds me a little bit. The Pentagon in DC was built, like during World War II in about like the same time. I know it's still bigger than the food bank, but it is possible to achieve these amazing projects. So I said a huge shout out to all of those folks who lent their time and expertise to us for this beautiful new building that we have now.
Absolutely. Certainly can't forget our wonderful donors, and also our volunteers certainly play a key role in the project. It's great to hear a lot of the feedback from our volunteers. Had an opportunity to meet several of our donors to walk them through the facility, our existing facility, or I would say our old facility, to really share that vision and get that support. Really helped us be in this position and be in this facility now to be able to do even more for our community in the future.
Yeah, well, in addition to kind of the main warehouse, that we'll talk about how that's changed, but the volunteer area is much larger. It's got nice bright windows, so we can take care of our volunteers, which is great, because again, we rely on our partners and our volunteers in the community to make all of this happen. So I'm sure they were very excited to get into our big brand new space too.
Absolutely. And I was able to hear it firsthand with just a few volunteers when we were able to provide a sneak peek when some of the work was done. And to see the excitement on their face it was well worth it. And a lot of our volunteers, they will come no matter what the space looked like. They just mentioned, a few that have volunteered in our new space now just said it's the world of difference. And, just having the additional windows for natural light, having murals on the wall that kind of communicates our mission, just makes it a more warm, welcoming environment for our volunteers to come in and do the work.
Yeah. Well, and I'll mention this again at the end, but we would love to see people in person at our partner distribution hub on Coit Road. Dwayne just mentioned the murals that are up. We've got two gorgeous murals kind of on our downstairs area, and another one that is in progress in our kind of atrium. Really gorgeous, and we'd love to show folks around the new building, and you can just see just what a inspirational space it is, working with community artists who are really putting their heart and soul into telling the story of our community through artwork, which is really I think it's just a wonderful touch that we've added to the space. Okay, well, and so the new building, it's much bigger, much bigger. Dwayne, if you would like to just, it's hard to imagine without actually being there, but walk us through a little bit of the size and the scale, our new capacity, all of that with our wonderful new hub.
Absolutely. I'd say when you look at the facility, if you're first pulling up, you're going to see this pretty elongated facility. It's almost the length of 3 football fields in terms of the length. But really the biggest thing, the biggest improvements that we've seen in this facility is our ability to increase our cold storage. We know that we mentioned earlier, distributing perishable and nutritious product is really our main mission of the food bank, to make sure that all of our partners have access to the healthy and nutritious food that they need every day. So when you walk into the facility, we've really ramped up the cold storage areas and even our dry storage areas. And overall, it's going to allow us to have the capacity to practically double our distribution that we were able to do out of our existing facility. So 100 million pounds of food we would have the capability of distributing out of this facility, which which is tremendous. We hope we don't get to that level where we need to distribute that much food, but it does position us in a world where if we need to provide another response, we have the capacity to be able to address that gap with our community.
Yeah. Well, I am just, 3 football fields is a lot. And I'll tell you, working at the food bank, you feel walking those 3 football fields a lot. It's a long space.
Absolutely, it sure is. And also, the need of really addressing child hunger and senior hunger. Those are going to be things that we see continue to rise as that population starts to age. And our kitchen is going to have the capacity to be able to do more as well to provide those services. So our previous kitchen had the capacity to do roughly 4,000 meals a day. And this new facility provides capacity to do roughly 20,000 meals a day. So that's pretty substantial just in terms of scale of what we would have the ability, the output to be able to do.
Sorry, last month the folks were joining us when Nicole and Amanda, they had mentioned they work in the children's and seniors programs, that our kitchen programs, our cold and hot meals are just so well received by the community, and there's like a wait list for a lot of those programs because we simply did not have the physical space to make more. So I know they were saying they are just so thrilled to have a space that can go from 4,000 meals now to 20,000 meals. So it's amazing how all programs, community, and operations all come together to make that happen here.
Absolutely. I say certainly because of this new facility, the plans that we have in place, it does allow us to be able to expand our distribution of healthy food, ultimately to seniors, children, and families who need us most. But it gives us that capacity to really address it at a higher scale.
Yeah, well, and with the cold storage, we have kind of 3 main areas that are a little different than like kind of what people I think kind of imagine, which is like just a standard warehouse with canned goods and things like pasta and rice. Is like these really important cold storage areas. We've got the refrigerated, the freezer, and then what one of my old team members used to call grandma's cellar, an area for kind of potatoes and onions and things that shouldn't be refrigerated and shouldn't also be just kind of at room temp also. And I believe that the increased capacity of kind of the refrigerated and freezer is about 80%. Is that right for that?
Yep, it's just about 80%. So we're almost close to doubling that space because that's where we're going to see the increased distribution primarily in those perishable areas. And that's exactly right. And that space you're referring to, we call it kind of our 55-degree room to really, put those desired items in that space so that we can make sure that we're storing products, safely and according to the proper temperature guidelines. Also on our cold dock, we have, upwards of 14 dock doors just on our cold dock. So in our existing facility, we had 2 dock doors for the cold dock. So that just kind of gives you a sense of the growth that we have just on that particular part of the operations. And again, throughout several areas of the building, flow is something that comes into place as well. So we wanted to make sure that things were placed pretty much adjacent to where it needed to be to really minimize the amount of time for travel. So we have our cold docks that are really lined on the other side of our refrigerated areas, our coolers and freezers. So when trucks are coming in, it comes right to the receiving dock, and directly behind the receiving dock is our entire bank of refrigerated areas. So it really makes the travel time a lot less for our operators, again, to allow us to gain more efficiencies within our operations.
Yeah, which of course that makes sense. That's how you would design it, is having so like basically like refrigerated or frozen product comes in on trucks, and we can just take it right from the truck then to the storage area. For folks who may not have ever seen our old facility, the refrigerated and freezer section was sort of next to it, but it was like a small hallway and it was a very narrow. And so trying to get any food that would come in just from those two dock doors was very not easy, to say the least.
Absolutely. And it was a trickle down effect as well, because not only, it took a little bit longer to put things away, but it also took a little bit longer for our transportation team to load their trucks because they had to also drive back in those refrigerated areas and also drive back around to the other side of the building to actually load their trucks. So, really when we had this one line, flow in mind, we were hoping that we would see a decrease in the time it takes to load the trucks as well. And also just makes it easier for order accuracy. Things, a lot less items will get left behind, which, really translates into, the correct items going out to our partner agencies the very first time. So ultimately, that's what we want. And we are starting to see some of those efficiencies there. We haven't tracked a lot of that data yet, but some of the feedback that we have received from our transportation team, it does make the loading process a lot easier right now compared to the existing facility. So it was great to hear that from the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, so we get truckloads of food kind of from larger distributors, but we also pick up food donations from local partners. And then we have to turn around, put together the orders, and send them out to our community partners. So it's I can imagine having a traffic jam would make it very confusing and trying to, make sure the right thing is in the right pile, and then not having enough cold docks. You've got then refrigerated product that would be waiting for those docks to be open. So well, as soon as you start going through, you can see all of the ways that our new space is really changing that entire the entire transportation paradigm that we have.
Absolutely. I would say that, the space is a lot more defined where you know exactly where things are going. It makes it, pretty straightforward for all of our operators to know, exactly which lanes going out to which dock doors, which loads are for receiving versus what's going out for shipping. Everything is a lot more defined, which helps streamline that entire process.
Yeah, it was great. And I know the kitchen also was redesigned too, to make things a lot easier and safer as well. And I've worked at restaurant kitchens that were not designed well. So I'd love to hear about the thought that was put into how ours actually is designed and works.
Absolutely. So, several members were part of that, part of the kitchen design. And I believe what he mentioned to me was it was more of a horseshoe shaped design. So it kind of starts off with the raw materials coming into the kitchen. And as it's starting to get cooked, and that horseshoe, as it turns around, that's where kind of the assembly and preparation is happening for the finished goods. And as you're continuing the back end of that horseshoe, it's then transitioning right back out to the cold dock to be staged right in front of dock doors for the delivery drivers to be able to load directly onto their trucks. So also within the kitchen areas, there is built-in storage within the kitchen. So there's a smaller area for ambient storage, and there are smaller coolers and freezers for holding some of the prepared meals. But then there's also larger coolers and freezers just for their raw material stock. So again, it's cutting down on the transportation time that it takes to gather all of the raw materials because they have all of those areas all housed under primarily within the kitchen. So it makes gathering the raw materials a lot quicker to really get the assembly process going for the finished product as it's making its way back out to be staged on the cold dock. So it certainly is transforms, kind of what we were doing in the past. And again, it's just making it one smooth handoff from, one department to the other department, from kitchen to the transportation team with ease without really having any discrepancies of where product is or searching for things or traveling a longer distance to get it. It's directly in front of a dock door. And again, transitions into hopefully a quicker loading time where we can use that expanded capacity potentially to serve more partners and clients in the community with our staff.
Well, because I remember, hearing from some, some staff in the kitchen areas, they would have to kind of call to get product from other places in the warehouse, and it was just this, as soon as you have like one thing, you would need another, and so it's just constantly going back and forth to get everything. And then the meals would be stored where other things are. So just keeping track of all of that and all the extra steps and the extra equipment going back and forth, it really sounds like it added up at our old building.
It sure is. I'd say it certainly did cut down on a lot of time it took just to transfer, because once all of the meals were prepared out of the kitchen, there was not enough space within the kitchen to hold all of the completed items. So all of the completed items for the day had to get transferred into the larger cooler at our older facility. And it's a lot of meals that we're distributing every day. So that was equivalent to about 25% of the floor space in our main refrigeration area that was dedicated for staging for meal production. So being able to have that space back, again, you can see the expanded capacity that we're going to have within this facility.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And for those who've joined us before, I'm a broken record on how amazing our kitchen is. Their food is amazing, and people really love it. And so I know that our partners will be thrilled if we're able to ramp that up, even more than what we're doing now. So that's very, very exciting for our community members out there. So then, and then I know we've talked a lot about the cold storage and the kitchen. I know then our kind of regular part of the warehouse is also larger too, as we're not just focused on kind of that product, but everything is still expanded too.
That's correct. So, when you look at it, it may look the same in terms of, the overall dimension of the space, but it's also a lot taller. So, there's a 40-foot ceiling line now that allows us to now store things at 5 levels versus 4 in our existing facilities. So you do see, a 30 to 35% increase in our storage density at our existing facility. We didn't go overboard with the amount of dry storage capacity because we are still keeping our existing facilities. So we will be leveraging the ambient warehouse in that facility should we ever need any type of overflow. So that's the reasoning behind not going as much as we did in the cold storage areas, but we still do have that expanded capacity in our dry warehouse right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, because I mean, you obviously, as we've learned, you just never know what can happen. We obviously don't want to have overflow to that level, but it's great that we do have that. So also our old building is well over 15 years old. So I know that also with our new facility, in terms of being efficient, we also took a lot of time to be energy efficient, moving towards sustainability. As we all know, energy price has been going up. Trying to be a good steward of our resources, for this building was really important, which was absolutely true for our old facility as well. It's just, the world has changed a lot with what we can do in the last 15 years. And so I always brag about our new LEED Silver, but if you wanted to talk a little bit about our environmental focus, sustainability focus, because that's obviously just a really important part of being good citizens.
Absolutely. Given the work that we do, we certainly wanted to make sure that we're operating in the most sustainable building. So we are pursuing the LEED Silver certification, which is really a pretty aggressive task. But I believe we are going to hit that. We're going to hit that milestone. And some of the bigger things that come out of having a LEED Silver facility, LED lighting throughout. It's a pretty large facility, almost 200,000 square feet. So we want to make sure that we are getting the most efficient lighting as possible throughout the space. So it is LED lighting throughout the entire facility. We do have a portion of our roof dedicated to solar panels to help decrease some of our energy usage. We're waiting on the data to get validated, but it looks like it can provide back at least 5% of energy savings annually. So we're looking to to get that data, but it's great to know that we're having something to reduce our energy usage. We have EV chargers in our parking lot, so if to really promote EV vehicles. And all of our mechanical systems, our refrigeration systems, they have the highest Energy Star rating as well, because that's really what's drawing the most power throughout this facility is the massive amount of refrigeration that we have in this building, and making sure that it has the most highest Energy Star ratings to be as efficient as possible. We also have metering on all of our electrical panels so that we can really see how much we're drawing in, how much power that we're drawing, and really report that back, on a monthly basis. All of our HVAC units, we have the ability to have independent heating, so that way we're not heating the entire facility, but maybe you're heating, certain areas that are, highly populated at a different temperature versus the others. And you have the ability to control that to be able to lower that temperature when the building is unoccupied. Because food distribution is, a big portion of what we do, sometimes there's food that we get that's not suitable for distribution. So we did partner with our neighbors next door at Collinwood Bioenergy, and we have a piece of equipment, we call it the food grinder, that will be able to turn a lot of the perishable items into natural energy. So we will have a food grinder that we have on site that will dispose of a lot of our perishable product. It will liquefy it. And there's a holding tank that we have right on the outside of that wall. And once it's full, our partners right next door will take that liquid product and convert it to natural energy at Collingwood Bioenergy next door. So we're working on a partnership to really get some reporting to really understand how much energy we're providing simply from the food scraps that we have, or food that's not suitable for distribution, which is great because now we're not sending that product to a landfill. We're able to convert that back over to natural energy, which I think is a huge accomplishment for the food bank.
Yeah, I'm when I know everyone is, pretty, excited by the grinder, because it sounds cool to be like, there's this massive food grinder that's turning, our, waste product into energy. But it really is exciting to be trying to find every way that we can to not be wasteful. On our kind of food resourcing side, we obviously work with, local grocery stores and other producers, to get food that is, still good and still, great to give to folks, but that might end up in a landfill if they weren't able to sell it for a cosmetic reason or something else. So I know on that side, and then on the other side of it, for the food that we aren't able to do, or scraps from the kitchen or whatever else it is, to kind of complete that cycle of eliminating waste is really great. I've heard actually, that there are so many, little areas where it just adds up. But, whether it's the LED or the HVAC system, all these pieces together, it 5% adds up when you've got another, percent from the grinder. So it's really exciting that we're trying to be as innovative as possible, to look at things from a holistic standpoint for that.
Absolutely.
So I love that.
And it's something that we're still learning as well. So we don't know exactly, what it takes to run all the ins and outs of the food grinder. Some of the things that we do know, it does require depackaging. So that product has to get depackaged before we can actually run it through that machine. So that's something that, again, volunteers play a very key role. We have a much larger space. We have a clean room as well. So that's something that we're defining, and it may be a great opportunity that we can launch off for sustainability initiatives for groups that are interested in sustainability projects to really assist the food bank in that capacity. So that's something that we're going to be putting out and really understand. But certainly it's something that's we conduct that with the help of our volunteers. And I know some of the common questions, anytime we have food that's not suitable for distribution in our volunteer repack area, the number one question is, where is this food going? And it's great to be able to share that story now that instead of that food going to a landfill, that we can see that that's being repurposed, that's really going to be converted back to natural energy. So really excited to be able to change that narrative now with our volunteers and share this exciting piece of news with that equipment to really help divert a lot of that product from going now to the landfill. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And, it's kind of like, we have like a, water, filtered water for our water bottles. So wish we had at the old facility, but again, like it's all these small pieces that come together that really make a difference, and also as a philosophical change where we really are trying to be sustainable at all levels. And of course, another shout out to our volunteers who are, again, respond, we are trying to respond to our community's needs, our clients, our community partners, our program partners, our volunteers, to listen to those voices the same way that we're listening to the voices of our staff when we are, trying to change the building and how we do things. So I love that, we do that, and hopefully, inspire other folks to, always keep your ears open and to be responsive. You never know when the next great idea is going to come from.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's also those, small, small details that, as part of LEAD that, really doesn't get communicated a lot, but, indoor air quality is extremely important, given, coming out of COVID, we certainly wanted to make sure that that was something that was top of mind. So even during COVID, there was a lot of retrofitting being done in organizations with their HVAC units, meaning that they were adding on ionization systems in their HVAC unit to really help purify the air. So those are things that were also built into the HVAC systems within this facility as well to help not only with LEED, but just also just help with, overall indoor air quality for staff and guests and volunteers that are coming in into the facility.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and just as we're getting close to the end of our time here, so just reminding everyone that if you do have questions, you can just throw those in the Q&A. And also, of course, if something comes to your mind later on, you can always reach out to me, and we can get some answers for you. But as we're kind of wrapping up, I would just love to hear. Obviously, we're still growing and moving into our building, but just kind of what you're excited about for our new fiscal year 23, and what you see as the future of the food bank, trying to meet the need that we're seeing in our community.
Absolutely. I think, one of the things that's exciting is, not really having capacity be a barrier. I think having, being a part of that conversation a few years ago, unfortunately, there are times where, we simply couldn't do things or couldn't do it to the scale that we wanted to due to capacity, or couldn't take in the amount of product due to the capacity. Knowing that there is a need out there in the community, I feel like that's really important that the food bank has that capacity and scale to be able to take in those donations, to be able to serve the community as effectively as possible. There's a lot that we've learned over the last few years just with new distribution types during the pandemic. Some are going to go away. Some are going to transition into maybe some larger initiatives. I think at the end of the day, it's great. And I'm most excited about being able to implement and having the resources, having the capacity to really be able to serve our community at a time that they need us most.
Yeah, well, because when you're not worried about capacity or headaches of having to touch and retouch and move product over and over, that also frees up time to be flexible, be adaptable, be creative, look for different solutions. And so I'd imagine it's almost like you're clearing out mental and physical space at the same time to approach the problem of food insecurity in different ways, which is it's an unfortunate reality. We obviously wish that weren't something that we needed to worry about, but I know, as we were talking about, we're serving hundreds of thousands of people every year, and there are still folks who would qualify for our services who we are not able to reach. And that is something that we can do through capacity, through innovation, through different distribution models. Really important. Yeah. Well, one question that, my predecessor always loved to ask our guests at the end was just, to reflect on whether it's a story or why you joined the food bank, something that has just stuck with you during your time, and having been with us for 8 years, I'm sure you have a ton of amazing stories, but I would just love to hear, what has really inspired you to keep going, and to what kind of lights your fire and keeps you our calm, cool, and collected leader that you are.
Thank you. No, I think I have, because I have, I guess, such a close connection with a lot of our partner agencies. I don't have a particular story that stand out, because I think I have the opportunity to see several letters and several emails that come in from a lot of our neighbors that they send directly to the pantries that they forward to the food bank. And those stories are touching, and they are all unique. Some resonate with me personally, but I think just seeing those letters as they're coming in or reading those emails, for me, is just a constant reminder of the work and why it's so important. I can't pick out just one. I think it's just when you see those emails coming through, it's a constant reminder of why we're here, and why our work is important.
Yeah, well, because I think one thing with scale that can be, kind of difficult to work through is, we're talking about these numbers that are almost, hard to imagine. 50 million pounds of food is kind of hard to wrap your head around. And then when you do actually get to, volunteer with our partners or at our own, pantry in Euclid, that all of those numbers translates to a person, to a senior citizen, a kid in school. And it takes that scale to reach, all these, people and families. So I'm actually kind of a little jealous that you get to see those letters and emails. um, I'm like, I can only imagine, the gratification that you must feel being able to know that when you make a building like this, that ultimately all of those people are benefiting, and being able to have healthier lives, because of your hard work.
No, absolutely. And it's certainly touching. We do try to make sure that, that makes it to the staff as well. And I think also, I'm fortunate, our transportation team, you mentioned where the rubber meets the road, they have the opportunity day in and day out to really see and connect with a lot of residents that we're serving. And one story that stands out in particular is, as one of our drivers was driving to a location, someone called him the food angel. And that kind of resonated. He kind of shared that story with several folks at the food bank. And it's just kind of been, just a constant reminder of really, how important the work is that we do. And it really stuck with me. It stuck with a lot of other team members as well. But I'm glad that, again, other members of the team are able to see the impact that they're having as well. It's a constant reminder. And it's also refreshing when you're having that day where you think it's a challenging day. That's another reminder of why we're here.
Yeah. Well, and that, projects like our, partner distribution hub, is able to accomplish, because, as I said, it was much harder to reach those people, working out of a facility that just was not built for the need that our community has. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes left. So like I said, if folks have any additional questions, I've been very fortunate to have Dwayne take me on tours of our building a couple of times. And I am very grateful that Dwayne has also talked to me again here for an hour today, because he's tired of having me ask him more and more about the building every time I see him. Another, I'm like, but really do appreciate your time. And I said, we have standing tour dates throughout the week. We would love to have people come visit us in person. And of course, you can, see us, if you'd like to volunteer. We've got awesome opportunities at our new space. Also, of course, at the Muni Lot and Euclid Pantry, and all of our partners, many of whom are, work primarily with volunteers. So again, thank you, Dwayne, so much for your time here today, for all of your tireless efforts to have this building become a reality, and for your team who they are food angels, they are kitchen angels, they are warehouse angels, they are the unsung heroes who really who do the work. They are awesome. So thank you so much. And I said, if anyone does have questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to me. And then we will be having our next conversation with Matt Jackson and Christine Cotter in January 11th. But like I said, we would love to see you all here in person. But thank you, Dwayne, again for coming in and sharing with us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, everyone have a wonderful day. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you soon, I hope. All right.